If you followed my videos, you know I love exploring the world through cooking, but sometimes you don't need to travel far to find new flavors and techniques. It's never made sense to me that Indigenous American food is not celebrated and taught in the mainstream. In further efforts to decolonize my cooking, I found Sherman's The Sioux Chef's Indigenous Kitchen and found some recipes I knew I had to try. Let's cook up a hunter stew with bean cakes and wojape mint sauce. First off, the base wojape. I used 3 cups of berries total. I'd like to try choke cherries but couldn't find any, so I used a mix of blueberries and cranberries. I boiled those in a cup of water with 1 teaspoon of monk fruit sweetener and a teaspoon of maple extract. If you aren't concerned about carbs, just use quality maple syrup. It is delicious in both sweet and savory applications. Boil that down until it's thick and luscious and then set aside to cool, as we'll use some of it in a bit. I ended up jarring it. Now the bean cakes. I used a mixture of dried kidney, black, fava, and mung beans to tailor the carbs that I cooked overnight in a crock pot. In my food processor, I put 2 cups of the bean mix, about a quarter cup of onion, 1 teaspoon of crushed juniper berries, 1 teaspoon of sumac, 1 egg, 1 to 2 teaspoons of sage, a quarter cup of oat fiber, and 1 to 2 teaspoons of salt. I processed until it could hold its shape but was still a little chunky. Took golf ball sized pieces of the mix, formed them into patties, dusted them in some oat fiber, and pan fried the cakes. Honestly, I was a little worried that the cakes would mean higher glucose spikes, but my body reacted well, particularly paired with the fats and proteins of the composed meal. Once those were crispy, I set them aside while I made the sauce. I chopped up 1 tablespoon of mint and added that to a quarter cup of the wojape. I then added a tablespoon of cider vinegar, a tablespoon of monk fruit sweetener, a teaspoon and a half of salt, half a teaspoon of maple extract, 3 tablespoons of oil, and whisked it all together. If you don't care about carbs, use maple syrup, and if you can find it, maple vinegar. I then set that aside while I finally made the stew. Ideally, I would have used cuts of bison, but I could only find ground, so I made little meatballs seasoned simply with salt, pepper, and oregano. I quickly browned those and set aside because I'll finish cooking them in the stew. All this time, I was soaking some morel mushrooms in about a cup of boiling water to use in the stew. In the same pan, I added some oil, the light parts of 1 leek, around 8 ounces of oyster mushrooms, 1.5 teaspoons of crushed juniper berries, around a tablespoon of fresh oregano, and 2 teaspoons of sumac. After sauteing until the leeks and mushrooms softened, I added in those soaked morels that I chopped, the green parts of the leek because I hate waste, the soaking liquid of the morels, which was about a cup, and a cup of stock. I used beef. I brought it to a boil, dropped the heat, added the meatballs, and covered, leaving it to cook for about an hour. Then I took the lid off and continued to cook for an additional 20 to 30 minutes until the liquid was reduced by about a third. I put it all together and found that this delicious meal really didn't affect my glucose despite my initial worries. This meal was hearty, earthy, and made me recontextualize some flavors like juniper and berries. I'm excited to learn more about indigenous cuisine. Try this out, let me know how it goes, and follow for more low-carbified recipes from all over the world and in our own backyard.